Good evening, everyone. So I'm back with a really, really quick review tonight. I don't know how long this live stream is going to go on for, but I've just not long gone back from seeing Labyrinth at the cinema. So this is the 1986 musical fantasy film starring David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly, and they were putting it on for the 40th anniversary. This is a weird thing that Odeon are doing at the moment, and I don't know if someone can help me with this. So I mean, obviously, 2026 is the 40th anniversary of the film, but I always thought they put films on like the actual anniversary. So this movie was released in June in the United States, and then we got it in the UK in like early December. So I'm like, why not put it on later in the year? They're doing the same thing with the Lord of the Rings 25th anniversary. Lord of the Rings came out in December, but they're putting it on, I think, as of like next week. So yeah, I really don't get how the whole anniversary thing works, but I always try and jump at the chance to watch an older film at the cinema if I get the chance to. Labyrinth is a film that I've watched countless times. I absolutely love the work of Jim Henson, The Muppets, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth included. I actually think I saw Labyrinth before I saw Dark Crystal, and even just comparing those two films, they're wildly different in tone. Dark Crystal being a very, well, like its namesake, much darker, very sort of lore heavy and quite adult in theme and complex. Whereas Labyrinth, this is just, like a fantasy storybook. This is like your Wizard of Oz, your Alice in Wonderland, Brothers Grimm kind of fairy tales. And all of them were influences in this film. All of those books actually do feature in the character of Sarah's bedroom. If you look around the room, you can see a lot of what would be the inspiration for this film. And it's just a really nice, easy watch. It's a very simple premise. Um, Jareth, the king of the goblins, steals Sarah's baby brother, and she has to go into the magical labyrinth and traverse its dangers in order to rescue the baby. It's very much like a fairy tale. Usually, you have the hero, like the male hero, saving the princess or something from the tower. Usually, so they're kind of flipping that on its head, but they are bringing in a lot of classic fairy tale elements to this, like goblins being very mischievous and evil creatures. And I think actually there are some stories where they do steal babies. And you've got David Bowie's character, King of the Goblins, who, in appearance is very fairy-like. He's the very sort of like alluring, seductive, elemental, almost like hypnotic kind of fairy tale character, like Fairy Lord, I guess, Fairy King. And yeah, it's just I love fantasy. I love storybooks like that. As I mentioned, like Brothers Grimm, grew up on stories like that, and they are universal and they are timeless, and the elements of those stories are constantly reworked in different ways. When it comes to some films, when I watch them for the first time and I'm just completely blown away with them, I tend to watch them in very, very quick succession, one after the other. And what I mean by this is that we got bath time. How you doing, man? He says, dance, magic dance. We'll get onto the music later because that definitely deserves its own section of the review. But yeah, occasionally I'll see a film, whether it's on like recorded off the TV back in the day or wherever it happens to be. Maybe it's a film that I'm quite late to the party on, and I'll watch it and I'll just be absolutely astounded by it. And as soon as that film finishes, this was usually on VHS, I'd rewind it right back to the start and I'd watch it immediately afterwards again. And I'd do like a double sitter, I guess, of that same film. A few films that come to mind where I've done that were the first Matrix film, which I remember seeing at my uncle's. I remember seeing all the trailers, how cool everything looked, the shades, the leather trench coat. It was the late 90s, early 2000s, and I hadn't seen a film like it. And I'm still kind of that way when I watch the first Matrix film. But yeah, what other films? And this was included, Labyrinth. I just love, creativity and stuff with puppets and practical effects and everything like this. And I saw Labyrinth, and it absolutely captured my imagination. And as soon as it finished, I rewound it and I watched it again. I've watched this film countless times. In fact, I think the last time that I watched this movie was probably maybe around like, I don't know, like 4 months ago. So yeah, I was kind of debating whether to even go and see it at the cinema tonight, because I thought, well, it's still fairly fresh in my mind. I can pretty much quote the film beginning to end. Will I really gain anything new watching it on the big screen? And I tell you what, it's got its fans. It has a cult following for a reason. And I got there, and the cinema was packed. It was very, very close to being sold out. And a lot of people, had bought blankets and everything like that. There was a lot of women in there, a lot of middle-aged women, I'll say that. But yeah, I was going to kind of address that. I thought, well, I know anyone can love Labyrinth, but if you go and by gender ratio in there, there's definitely a lot more women. And I think the film itself is just a really, really great coming of age story for a young woman to watch. The whole essence of the story is Sarah, who at the beginning of the film is very childlike. Her room, all of the stuff in there, her toys, her like cuddly animals and everything. She's being very selfish, and she doesn't care to look after her baby brother or anything like that. She's very dismissive of all of the obligations that come with adulthood, and she's very much shutting that out and wants to escape into her own world. And of course she does escape into a different world, and by the end of it, she comes out a lot maturer. You have no power over me. She has agency now, and she also has the qualities of like maternal instincts, and she disregards all of her junk and her toys and everything, and definitely comes into her own by the end of it. You could maybe read into it. I've always found it a little bit weird with like the David Bowie, Sarah thing, because I can't remember how old Jennifer Connelly was when she did this film, but it would definitely be an aspect of, like a young woman growing up and this sort of, David Bowie like figure, I guess, like that attraction there, I guess, and all things that you come to terms with, with going through puberty and things like that. So I think it's just a really, really good coming of age film for for a woman to see, essentially, and maybe that's why there's more women there. Not to say it can't appeal to anyone. I love the puppets in there. I think Jim Henson is an absolute genius, and I think that's what sort of hit me the most when I watched this film for the first time, was just the level of talent and the amount of puppeteers you've got on board, all the sets that are created, and some of the charming qualities as well, like the matte paintings and things like that, just to take these characters and make them larger than life. I get the same way with animated films, like hand-drawn animated films, where it's just a couple of lines on a piece of paper, but they become so much more, and they become fully realized characters. And I love that. There are a couple of wonky effects in the film, and these have always been wonky. And I think even Jim Henson, the director of this film, mentioned that he was unhappy with how the final shot turned out. And it's the chili gang, chili down with the fire gang. It's a completely random fucking scene, but that's why I love this film. Again, like Alice in Wonderland, it's all those random episodic encounters, really, with all of these wonderful, weird characters. And the compositing has never looked great in that scene. The puppeteering's wonderful, where they're all taking off their heads and, their limbs are doing like crazy stuff. And it's a catchy song, but the compositing is really, really dodgy. I think it was filmed in front of like a black velvet screen. And then when they tried to composite it in with a new background, it's never looked good. And it does sort of stick out a little bit compared to everything else, because mostly everything else is captured within camera. But I can forgive it, some of its shortcomings like that. It's a very small scene. It's a short scene. It's a completely random scene. But yeah, I think it's just the charm of films like this, and I really miss fantasy films like this style. And there were so many. I mean, you can go as far back as, stuff like Wizard of Oz, as I mentioned, was a huge influence with this film. The element of characters or elements of your everyday mundane life being transported and changed somewhat when it comes to the fantasy world. One thing that I actually never noticed, and I don't know, maybe I have noticed this before, but I didn't notice it until today watching it on the big screen, where the sound's a little bit better, I guess, is that when Sarah's in her room at the beginning, after she kind of storms off into her room, and I think her like dad comes and knocks on the door to speak to her, telling her that they're leaving because they've got a night out. She's got a music box that she's playing, and the music from the music box is When the World Falls Down, the David Bowie song, which features later in the film during the whole ballroom dance scene, the masked ball. And I never noticed that. I never remembered that song being her music box song, which then plays later in the film. It's probably always been there, staring me in the face, but yeah, something didn't click until today. So maybe it's like maybe you didn't notice, but your brain did. So maybe I have been aware of that, but yeah. So even still, after all these amount of rewatches that I've done, I'm still noticing new things. Let's get to a few comments here real quick. Bath Time says, wear tighter trousers and sing it. That was one thing that was going to be really, really daunting to me was, David Bowie plays two characters in this film. He plays King Jareth, and he also plays King Jareth's, well, it's there front and center, isn't it? And I was getting it front and center on a massive cinema screen. So I'm sure the ladies in there were loving it. But yeah, it's almost like a tractor beam. Like you're trying to maintain eye contact with anything else, and it's just like it's just there. I do think it would be a cool Halloween costume to do, though. It's like the costume itself is cool. Like I love like the big shoulder padded leather coat that he has. Well, he goes through like loads of costumes in the film, but I've always thought it was a really striking look to the character, and just the poster as well. Like I'm going to bring it up here, and I think it was. I always thought it was Drew Struzan, and I think that's a common misconception. I don't think it is Drew Struzan, but it's almost like that same style. But just posters like that, where it's just like the wonderful artwork and sort of the character collage of everything. Now you just have like a horribly clusterfucked photoshopped poster, and there's just it's that artistry behind it on this. And yeah, let's talk some more. Carl says Labyrinth is amazing and even better on the big screen. There's a Labyrinth fan fest held every year as well. I didn't know that. I did see recently they're doing it in concert, which I was tempted to go and see, but I guess I've gone to see this now instead. But the music is wonderful. Like the soundtrack's amazing. I even love the just like the actual score to the film, the Trevor Jones score. Very electronic, very of its time, but catchy, and I think complements David Bowie's compositions in the film really well. It all kind of blends together as one unique sound. And I think David Bowie pretty much had carte blanche when it came to the music here. They were looking at some other artists maybe to play the character. I think they were discussing perhaps like Mick Jagger or Michael Jackson or something. They knew they wanted someone big and someone in the pop culture at the time, and David Bowie took the job on. I think when he initially got the script, it was quite light on humor, and Bowie sort of sent it back and said it needs to be funnier. So they redrafted it a whole bunch of times. The one who actually is credited for the screenplay is Terry Jones from Monty Python. Now, he did the original draft, but the finished product that you see on screen is completely changed from what his original concept was. And I feel like it was a lot of, what Terry Jones wanted, but what the studio wanted. So I think he wanted sort of like a more darker adult take on it, kind of like a Twisted Tale in some respects. And I know that he wanted to keep the Jareth character, the King of the Goblins, out of the film until the very end. So you travel through the labyrinth until you get to the center of the labyrinth, and then you meet the character. They're also in talks of possibly having the character be like a giant puppet character before eventually becoming, a live action actor, David Bowie. And I don't know if that would have worked. I think the tone that they settled on, it was the sweet spot, and I think that's the reason that it has that cult following. It's got the catchy tunes. David Bowie is a massive draw to the film and is, a very memorable aspect to the film. And then you also have all this creative puppetry and character and, creature designs and things like that. So I think they made the right call with it. Would it have been interesting to see like a more darker tale, like a grim fairy tale or something like that, or a Hans Christian Andersen kind of thing? Yeah, I think it would have been cool to see that too, but I think they made the right calls with this one. And if you do want a darker Jim Henson fantasy story, watch Dark Crystal. I actually think Dark Crystal and Labyrinth would make an amazing double feature to watch both of those together, and both wildly different, but still showcasing the amazing genius of Jim Henson and company. Bath Time says she's incorporated the idea of being mother in it, like Ripley, Sarah Connor, and other good, strong female characters. Yep, you got it, man. That's exactly it. It's exactly it. Returning to her world, having incorporated lessons learned to become an adult. You've been doing reading on Hero's Journey. I've still got to do Save the Cat. I'm going to do Save the Cat this week. I've been listening to music this week on my drives, but next week I'm going to get through that because it's only a few hours, I think. Carl says, even to this day, I've never really understood the riddle with the guards, the one who tells the truth and one always lies. Yeah, me too. Me too. And it always makes me laugh when the other one turns to the to the other door and goes, is that right? And he goes, I don't know. I've never understood it. And I'm exactly the same way. I remember watching the Ricky Gervais show, the animated Carl Pilkington episodes, and they do a similar scenario in that. I think Ricky says, like, if me and Steve were guarding this door and this door, what would you ask us to get through? And Ricky Gervais kind of uses that same logic on Carl, and even then I don't understand it. So but yeah, I just love the creature designs in this and sort of like the fun play on words. I think the bit that's absolutely genius is the helping hands part. And it reminds me of an old kids show that I used to watch, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It might be something called Zap, if anyone remembers that. I think it was on like CITV or something back in the day. If you're sort of like early to mid 30s, maybe you know what I'm talking about. But I remember this thing where you have like the hands sort of talking. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, because I'm just going to keep this going. But I thought that was genius, the helping hands and how creative they are with all the different puppeteers and performers and how they create all these different faces and mannerisms. The false alarms, these giant like rocks that are like, beware, beware, and they're just full of shit. They're just lying to you. They're false alarms. I love creative stuff like that. It's wonderful. The worm as well. I've always been really creeped out by the worm character, the character she meets before she goes into the labyrinth, and he's like, "Come inside and meet the missus," but he's really like forceful with that shit. Like he asks her, and she's like, "Oh no, thank you," and then he's like, "Come inside and have a nice cup of tea." I'm like, stop offering me tea, and stop offering to meet your missus. I'm not interested. Yeah, I mean, every single set piece, every single scenario, everything's great. If I had to pick a favorite character, I really like Sedidimus and Ambrosius. In fact, if I got a dog like that, I think I probably would call him Ambrosius. Yeah, but I mean, they're all great, aren't they? And David Bowie's wonderful in the role as well. He has a very strange line delivery at one point, though. I mean, I haven't seen David Bowie in a whole bunch of films. I think, including this, I've seen him in Prestige, and that's probably it. I've probably seen him in 2 movies. I don't know how many films he did in total, but I think it's where Sarah's about to go into the labyrinth, and he kind of lays out all the rules to it, and he says that, you know, you've got 13 hours to get to the center of the labyrinth to rescue your brother. And I'm trying to do his line delivery now. It's really difficult to do. But he goes like, "Turn back, Sarah. There's still time," or something like that. And he just says it in this like, it sounds like it should be more intense, you know, like "Turn back, Sarah," or something like that. And it's just like this really dreamy drifting off, "Turn back, Sarah." I'm like, we couldn't do another take of that. But he's great. He's there for the music. He's there for the catchy tunes. He's there for the sex appeal, I guess, and based on people's reviews of this film, I think they were very successful in that regard, to be honest. So, yeah. Must admit, though, controversially, I've never been a massive David Bowie fan when it comes to his music. Don't get me wrong. I'm more of a greatest hits guy when it comes to David Bowie, and I probably do need to actually listen to his whole discography. I did listen to his first ever album, though. When I'm discovering like a new artist or a band, I always tend to start at their first album and work, you know, my way through just to see the musical progression. Don't listen to David Bowie's first album; it's atrocious. You listen to it and you think, how did this guy go on to international stardom? But I guess if I was going for a favorite era of Bowie, unsurprisingly, it'd be 80s era. I love Let's Dance. I love the one that Tarantino used in Inglourious Bastards, Cat People Putting Out Fire. That's a really good song, and he's got a few other bangers too. But yeah, I've never really listened to a full Bowie album. Maybe I need to correct that. Um, Bad Time says, I love that riddle, Carl. It's pretty simple. One lies, one tells the truth. So if you ask what the other one says, you will always get a lie. So you do the opposite. How does that work, though? Okay, so if you approach one of them and you said, would the other one tell a lie? And he says yes. But what if that one's lying? I don't understand. That's the bit I don't understand. But I have, small Neanderthal brain, Bath Time, so you're gonna have to like break it down for me, I think. Yes, Carl. George Lucas was involved in the making of this. Yes, so his company, Lucasfilm, but he was also executive producer, and apparently actually had hands on editing the film as well, because he is very much an editor. But I think he and John Grover, the editor of this film, had a bit of a, I want to say love-hate relationship, but their approaches to editing were very, very different. John Grover mentioned that his editing style is very loose when it comes to dialogue. He likes to allow for pauses and for the actors to sort of breathe, whereas George Lucas is very action orientated and he likes to cut the dialogue very short. So it's very, to the point, effective, get in, get out, and get on with the rest of the story. And it was the sort of like this push and pull. They had to, compromise every now and then. But most of the time, George Lucas would come in and edit it, and then John Grover would come in and go, "Oh, I don't like that," and he'd change it again. So, yeah, I mean, if you're in a working relationship like that, where it's complete creative differences, then yeah, you've got to cut ties and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't realize until today how hands-on George Lucas was with the whole thing, which is really cool. When you look at some of the films that George Lucas was involved with, whether it be like a producer or editor or whatnot, it's interesting to see. I'll just say as well, I really miss fantasy films like this. I kind of touched on this earlier, but just elaborating on that point a little bit more. Films that came out around this era, and if I was going to go for, I was going to say the Holy Trinity, but I'm going to throw a fourth one in there. Films such as this, Labyrinth, Never-Ending Story, Return to Oz, Ridley Scott's Legend. I guess I can chuck Dark Crystal in there. There you go. You got a fifth one. They had such a unique look to them, like the puppetry, the sets, and I think more so than anything, those fantasy films from the 80s capture that traditional storybook quality to them. And we're way past this now, in 2026, 40 years on. We're never going to get a film like that ever again that looks and feels and sounds this way. I always think that with the advancements in picture and everything, like Tarantino likes to harken back to his films, his inspirations of film he's grew up with. But I would love a director to come along and go, I'm going to use the same sound systems that they used in the 80s. When you watch a really old film and you can just tell it's an old film based on the sound. It's difficult to describe, but just the audio quality itself of the voices, and even like really old films, just by the soundtrack, like music has changed so much that the cinematic score and the sound that you can capture, if you heard, I know this is going back quite a ways now, but Duel of the Fates in 1999, if that song was in A New Hope in 77, people would have shit their pants. If you listen to the soundtrack of the original Star Wars film, just the recording quality, it's night and day in terms of orchestration as what the same composer from the same franchise of music can conjure. And I've always wondered why directors don't go, I want to capture the look of that film, so I'm going to use the same cameras so you get that sort of film grain to it, but I'm also going to use the same sound. Maybe it's just completely obsolete now, but I imagine someone in Hollywood would be able to have access to it. And I think it's just that it probably is nostalgia talking, because I grew up on all of these films. Yes, I was born 1993, but I think even when compared to a lot of my friends growing up, the stuff I was watching, none of my friends were watching. I was watching stuff from the 80s. I was watching Indiana Jones, original Star Wars, Batman 89, stuff like this, Return to Oz. So I feel like I very much had an 80s upbringing. Probably why I'm an old soul, really. That probably has a lot to do with it now I think about it. And I have such a nostalgia for films like this and a need for more films like this. I would love to see The Hobbit done in a style like this, they would have to remove loads. Like they'd have to take the story and condense it down. But in Labyrinth, where they make it to the goblins, just the way the goblins look themselves, how they're like these little, like knee-high little giggling, you know, creepy little gremlin things going like, yeah, like running around. I could imagine Goblin Town, a Jim Henson made Hobbit movie where maybe you're allowed one human actor in there. But even then, or just make it like Dark Crystal, something like that. And you've got all these creepy little mischievous goblins running around. When they make it to the Goblin City at the end of this, where they're almost at the castle, and you've got this huge, massive, elaborate set of this built-up, sort of crooked, quirky-looking Goblin City. And I was just thinking, like, oh, this would be so cool. And the little skirmishes in this, like the little fights and whatnot, like they're not world-ending, they're not, terrifying or horrific or anything like that. They're just sort of like fun, slapsticky action, for kids. I was thinking, oh, imagine if you had the Battle of the Five Armies like this and it was done in this style. I don't know. A guy can dream, but I think The Hobbit would lend itself very, very well to a film done in this style. And I'm never going to get it. It's never going to happen. Maybe the closest we would have got would have been Guillermo del Toro's, and yeah, just thinking out loud. But I love fantasy movies of this style. I really, really do. Carl says, I always thought the film would have turned into a great video game. Did they make a video game, actually? I'm just sort of looking at the legacy of this. There's a whole bunch of prequel and sequel comics, which I didn't know about. But yeah, it says the film has been adapted into a variety of media, including books, video games, board games, and comics. So I don't know if it's... Let's check video games, actually. Is there a section on that where it says about that? I mean, I agree with you, Carl. I didn't even know there was one until now, but maybe it's like this really bare bones, like point and click adventure or something. Oh, video games. Here we go. Oh yeah, the film was adapted for the Commodore 64 and Apple II home computers in 1986, and it was called Labyrinth, the computer game. Okay, so fair point. Like a video game remake, then something more up to date. Yeah, I think that would fit really well. Actually, I can imagine something like that. I'd be curious to read the sequel and prequel comic books now, but because there are hints, there is like a haunting quality to Jareth's character, and you look around the labyrinth and you think, like, who constructed this labyrinth, and why is Jareth here, and is he cursed here? Does he have is he like Phantom of the Opera, sort of locked in his tower, pining after his old love or something, and trying to find a new one in the character of Sarah? I don't know. There is like a little bit of history there when he sings. Oh, what's the final song in the film? How you turn my world, you precious thing. That one with all the staircase, and I forgot what it's called. Live Within You? Is it? Or is it? I think it's just called Within You. Yeah, that's it. He's like singing it to Sarah, and his eyes are like welling up, like he's about to cry. Like he really cares for her and loves her, which is a little bit creepy, which is massively creepy, actually. But there are layers to the character a little bit that alludes to some kind of past or history. But yeah, if you're interested, guys, I guess there's prequel and sequel comic books, so get stuck into that Labyrinth lore, I guess. Bathtime says, I've actually read the Akalabeth this week. Good man. Yeah, no, once the momentum picks up, it's smooth sailing towards the end. It's all good stuff. Bathtime says, the Bog of Eternal Stench was something that genuinely traumatized me as a child because I didn't want to be smelly. Yeah, they mentioned in the film that if one drop of this gets on you, you will be smelly forever. And I've always wondered where Ludo sort of howls and all the boulders and stepping stones rise out of the bog and they walk across them. You've still got the residue of all this bog water on top of these stones. So when you walk across it, technically you are getting drops of the Bog of Eternal Stench on you. So I don't know how that works, but it is, yeah, it's really fucking gross, the Bog of Eternal Stench, and how they're like these little buttholes, like farting and burping, and they're like pulsating. I'm like, oh, that's fucking gross. I know what they're resembling. Bathtime says, a keen hero's journey enjoyer would probably compare the swamp she has to cross to Dagobah in Star Wars, similar metaphors and all that. Yeah, definitely. And is there a moment where, I guess that moment is probably also the bit where she goes into the bubble, into the masked ballroom, sort of seeing haunting visions of what her future could be, a distraction, and having to overcome that and best that. So yeah, I'm starting to see some of the commonalities now. I just need the theory behind it. Give me time, I will get through the reading material. Bath Time says, so we have door yes and door no. We have one guard that lies and one who does. Ask which door will the other person tell I should pick. The answer will always be a lie. Okay. I'll take your word. Well, if I'm ever in that situation, I know how to get out of it now. So, although Sarah in the film says she knows how to get out of it, and she does it, and she still falls. So that's like, because if you ask true guy, he's going to tell you the truth, i.e., the other guy will say door no. Vice versa, the liar will change the answer to a lie, so it's always the opposite door. Okay. Carl, I grew up on these films and it gave me such a great imagination. Really don't think kids get that opportunity these days. Well, I think that's echoed perfectly in the trailers that I got before this film. My word, how far Pixar have fallen. This awful looking animated trailer came on with like these kind of like beaver gopher characters in it. And they said the word, they're called hoppers or something. And then I thought, oh god, Hoppers is the new Pixar movie. This can't be Pixar. This doesn't match the standards of Pixar usually. Maybe modern Pixar. And I was just watching it. It looked like this awful, terrible Illumination film or something. And I thought, my god, this is the caliber we're getting now. And I can't even remember the other trailers. Just like these really, really awful like kids films. And Labyrinth was technically a kids film. I was actually looking around, and I think some parents did bring some of their kids to see this, and I really hope that this was their first time seeing it. And I was hoping the crowd would get into it a little bit more. It was a sold-out screening, and I thought, people are going to be singing along to it. It's kind of like Bath Time you talked about when you went to see Rocky Balboa, and everyone was like, Rocky, Rocky, chanting. Not that I need it like a cinema from the US where everyone's clapping and whooping and hollering all the way through, but for something that has such a huge cult following, and everyone's there for the same reason. Pretty much everyone in that cinema would have seen Labyrinth before and love Labyrinth, and just want to see it on the big screen and have a great time. But apart from, I think there was like one person in front of me, didn't do this all the time because this would have got really fucking obnoxious very, very quickly, but she was sort of saying the lines ahead of some of the characters, but she only did it sparingly. So I'm like, you know what, that's fine. She's into it. And you could see her sort of like moving along to magic dance, things like that. But everyone else was just stone-faced. I was like, come on, guys. It's Labyrinth. It's a Saturday. Enjoy yourselves. But I mean, I can't talk. I mean, I wasn't singing or whooping or hollering, so I guess I'm part of the problem. But yeah, it's very interesting. Different etiquettes, I guess, when it comes to, people going to the cinema. Bath Time says, I think Spielberg's dark kids film making so much more money and a bigger cultural impact probably killed this dark kids fantasy genre off. I always say that, the films that came out in the 80s, I absolutely love. And would I have loved to have experienced the 80s as like a teenager or growing up? Absolutely. But I tell you what, I wouldn't have changed growing up in the 90s for the world. I think the cartoon shows that we were getting and the kids films, that like the actual animated films we were getting in the 90s are by far the strongest of any decade we've had. And that's not to take away from some recent ones. Every now and then you will get some wonderful ones, but just the wealth of amazing films that we grew up with. And as Carl said, like the imagination behind it. Yeah, it really does just capture your imagination when you're watching these at a younger age. And because they're universal traditional stories, they stay with you. Nostalgia plays a big part in it as well, definitely. But I mean, that's a horrible thing where you go back to a film that you watched as a kid and it doesn't quite hold up as well as you remember. That's a horrible feeling. But thankfully, stuff like this, it's it's for all ages. It's a great family film. Carl says, there is still talk of a sequel to Labyrinth in the works. Personally, I hope they don't make it and just leave it alone. Yeah, so this film was made by TriStar, but because Lucasfilm was attached to it, there's probably a few more hoops that they have to jump through this. But Jim Henson, the Muppets and everything, I know Disney owns the Muppets, and they now own Lucasfilm. So I was thinking horrible thoughts like, did Disney have the rights to Labyrinth? Could they, if they wanted to, and God hope this never happens, if they wanted to, could they do a sequel? Because they've destroyed Indiana Jones, they've destroyed Star Wars, they destroyed Willow, then deleted it off Disney Plus. Even Disney realized how much of a mess up they made with that show. Like, the only way that you can watch that Willow show, if you're anyway morbidly curious, is to go and pirate the damn thing. So I was thinking, do they own Labyrinth, or is it's probably like split between a few companies now? Maybe that's why we haven't seen it. The thing is, there's an audience for it, but I really hope, I like to think that a lot of people that love this film are very protective of it, and they wouldn't see anyone else playing that Jareth character. It is David Bowie. And what would it be? It would be Jennifer Connelly's character and her daughter, who's this young upstart. And it'd be a soft reboot. It'd be all the same characters coming back. They wouldn't have any new creative stuff. They ditched the puppets for CGI, or they'd have puppets, but their faces would be augmented with CGI. It'd just be a mess. Oh God, who would they cast? If you're going with sort of like a pop icon, who are you going to cast as Jareth? Like, let's say you gender flip it. Let's say you can open it up to anyone. Who are you going to go for? Who's popular at the moment? Do you know what they'd get? They'd get like fucking Taylor Swift, wouldn't they? It'd be Taylor Swift or Sabrina Carpenter. I could actually see Lady Gaga, though. That's the thing. Like, if you were going to cast anyone, which they should never do, this should never be remade, sequels, prequels, anything. Leave it alone. I'd be kind of curious if they got Lady Gaga, because she's incredibly talented. She's a wonderful singer, and she does have the acting chops. Does she have the well, I guess, yeah, she does have theatrics. I was going to say, does she have the same theatrics as a David Bowie? Yeah, she probably does. She could probably do it if she wanted to. But no, please no. I need something sacred in my life. For now, the only two franchises, well, I guess this isn't really a franchise, is it? But this film's sacred. So far, the Back to the Future films are sacred, and the Gremlins. But I think even then, I think they've announced Gremlins 3. So another one bites the dust. Maybe it will be good. I always have to say that, maybe it will be good. And it never is it? Let's be fair. Like 99.999% of the time, it never is good. So let's just go with like the cold, hard facts and the empirical data that we have at this point. Let's see what else we have. Carl says, did you notice David Bowie's face is hidden throughout the maze and the walls? Yeah, there's some really great stuff. And one thing that I really want to see how they did this. And it could be just like special effects, like compositing or something like that. But the bit where she's trying to get into the labyrinth at the beginning, and she speaks to the worm, and the worm's like, oh, the labyrinth's full of openings. You're just not seeing them. And she sort of, it all looks like a brick wall, but she walks up to it and it's like another layer, but like the optical illusion of where the camera is. I wonder if they actually did that. Stuff where someone will paint themselves camouflage up against a wall to blend in. I love stuff like that. And I do wonder if they painted that brickwork to make it look like it was all one wall. I don't know, maybe, or maybe they just sort of like composited her behind it or something like that. But yeah, I did notice his face throughout. And I think that's cool. It adds a element of lore and sort of history to the labyrinth, I guess, that even when Bowie isn't on screen, his present, he's always watching. He's always there somewhere. So it just ramps up the threat level, doesn't it? Battime says, do you think the bog has anything to do with changing nappies or something, and some kind of hidden fear she has of kids? I'm not really sure. Maybe if that played an element at the beginning of the film, I think if they'd have drew reference to that, I think without that at the beginning, we're kind of reaching there, but I wouldn't say that's completely unfounded. I don't know if you can extrapolate every single element of this film to something in her everyday life. I'm trying to think, like the chili down with the fire gang, these things that are just throwing their heads around and trying to rip her head off. I mean, bath time, if you're going to do some like digging into that, you're the man for it. So yeah, see what you can do with the chili down with the fire gang. I watched an art house film called Dogville once, and in it there's a big scene where a church bell has to ring 12 times. I shouted 8 when it was on 7 and got a load of looks. Worth it. Robin says, you forgot about Doctor Who. Oh, God, I haven't watched Doctor Who in years. It sort of ended for me with David Tennant. I watched the first Matt Smith series, and I did hear that maybe Matt Smith got better as it went on, but I couldn't get into it. I was done at Tennant, so it's been over a long time for me. But yeah, I mean, that's another franchise that's utterly, utterly devastated now. Star Trek as well. Just wiped them all out. All of them, haven't they? Bath Time says they did a kind of Goblin Town Doctor Who musical episode. It's the only one I've seen from Disney, and it was nuclear grade bollocks. Yeah, it's just Disney. Disney's just we need to rip Disney out, don't we, at this point? Twig, root, and stem. It's just that's the source of everything, Disney. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Cole says the woman who lives in the tip always creeped me out. Yeah, it's really cool. And actually, I didn't notice this for the first time on the big screen today, but the last time I watched it, which was about 4 months ago, I did notice this for the first time, that there's a whole bunch of them. And you don't really it cuts to a few wide shots, but it's really the up close coverage. You can just see like piles of trash moving around in the background, and I thought it was maybe just like little landslides of it because there's loads of it. But there's loads. There's like a couple of these like women like scattered around in the background, so there's loads of them. Like they're a whole race, I guess, of these creatures that just have these like huge packs on their back with all the junk and everything. That's actually one of my favorite scenes. It's quite on the nose, isn't it? Her just disregarding all of her trivial childhood toys, her teddy bears, her books, her dollies, her doll houses, and everything like that. And she rises above it. She reaches adulthood and breaks out of that scene. But there is an inherent element of danger and creepiness to some of these encounters in this films. And it's not like massively overt or anything like that. It's not traumatizing or terrifying in any way, shape, or form, but it is creepy. And that's an element I think we've lost from a lot of kids stuff nowadays. The films that I've already mentioned, but another one that really used to creep me out when I was younger was, did anyone see the David Jason animated BFG film? Really, really good film. By far the best adaptation of BFG as far as I'm concerned. And that is really creepy and actually quite scary in some parts. But they pepper in enough whimsy and give it a happy ending at the end where you can make it through it. And I think even Don Bluth mentioned that when it came to The Land Before Time. Now, granted, with The Land Before Time, they did have to remove a lot of that film because it was too much. But I think Don Bluth said, and I'm paraphrasing here, saying that don't underestimate kids. Like, kids can handle a lot, but as long as you give it a happy ending at the end, so they can go through, like characters dying and, overcoming adversity and everything like that and really perilous shit. But as long as it has a happy ending and all's well that ends well, then that's what matters. And I do agree with that. I really do agree with that. And I think a lot of, family films now, kids films, whatever you want to call them, have lost their bite to them a little bit. And as a kid, like, you might not even pick up on all of the profound adult lessons that it's teaching you. But I think those are the main ones. You might pick up on some things on a surface level, but the good ones are always the ones where, as you get older, you come back to them, you can appreciate elements to them a lot more. And I'm thinking about Littlefoot's mom right now from The Land Before Time, and I need to stop because I'm going to fucking cry on screen. That's what I mean, though, right? It's just these kids' films that you just think, oh, it's a fun little animated film about dinosaurs or whatever it is, but there's a lot more going on with it. And we need more stuff like that. We get it every now and then, very few and far between, but it would be nice. But yeah, just going back to that, I would love to buy an art book of this, like The Art of Dark Crystal or The Art of the Labyrinth, because the concept design, I bet, is wonderful for this film, and the different creature designs. And these are the creature designs they went with for the film. I bet there's loads in the concept art stage where they were planning this film that never saw the light of day that are probably also really, really cool. It's just stuff that adds to the world. You don't even need an explanation as to who these characters are, where they came from, why they all have this trash on their backs or anything like that. They just exist in this world, and it's great, and it just fleshes it out. Bath Time says Roald Dahl is a fucking horror writer. Yes, he is. Yeah, good stuff. His books are terrifying. Witches, man, that's some proper horror. I totally agree. Yeah, and I grew up with a lot of Roald Dahl's books as well. I remember one story that just absolutely captured my imagination, and this is probably testament to, I think, my year 3. I think it would have been year 3 teacher who did an amazing reading of this. This was our classroom story. And every other lesson, she'd read another chapter of it right before home time. And I was hooked, and I just needed to know the end of it. And I think we watched the film in class. It was Danny, the Champion of the World. And they did a film of it, and it had Jeremy Irons and his real life son playing Danny. So that was a cool layer to the film, in that you have a real life father and son, you know, like it is in the book. I think Robbie Coltrane as well plays the groundskeeper or whatever it is. But yeah, BFG, Matilda, George's Marvelous Medicine, James the whole, all of Roald Dahl's books. It's great stuff. JD Seaman says, if you're aware, Labyrinth was filmed from April 15th to September 6th of 1985, and Jennifer Connelly's birthday is December 12th, 1970, meaning that she was 14 years old for the whole filming process. Okay, that does make things really weird when it comes to Jareth, but you know, people still love this film, and it is creepy, but it doesn't go massively overboard. But I think the Jareth character is an extrapolation of, you know, raging hormones at 14, and, you know, this seductive male character and the allure of that, and things like that. And it is creepy. It is creepy at 14, but I've always assumed that Jareth is an extrapolation of that side of growing up, you know. Bath Time says apparently there's a spiritual remake to Labyrinth called Mirror Mask. That did dreadfully, with the Chinese film market being so important. It's a brave man to release Labyrinth there, as they can't say it. I've never heard of Mirror Mask. Is it going to be one that I have to check out? I don't know. But even this film, even Labyrinth, didn't do that great. Domestically, it did pretty terribly, and it wasn't until it was released internationally where it definitely did make its money back. I think so. It was a budget of 25 million, and it only made 12.9 during its entire US run, and then it grossed over 35 million when it was released worldwide. So, and then from home video release and playing on TV and whatnot, it has gained that massive cult following that it has today, to now where it's at the point it's probably up there as one of the best films of the 80s, or certainly most iconic films of the 80s. Robin says, we're living in a post-Stranger Danger society, and parents seem to want their kids to be sensitive to that creepiness. Yeah, maybe there is that protective quality to it. And I'm not saying like go overboard with anything by, you know, just keep it to the level that films we had. You can have an element of scary danger in the films, as long as, you know, kids can. I think even then, I think they just don't give kids enough credit. Like, we knew like the scary stuff, we knew like the villainous characters and the hero characters and the nice characters, and we were just in it for the adventure. And I think you can't have a great adventure unless there is an element of danger or some scary things, because that's life. Life is going to throw that at you. And I don't think we should sugarcoat anything or keep kids away from all of that, because they're going to need to be exposed to those kind of elements of stories. And I think it's important. I really do. Bath Time says, written by Neil Gaiman and made by Henson Productions in 2005. Neil Gaiman, isn't he? Do I want to Google his name? Is he the one I'm thinking about involving hot tubs and who has been recently disgraced? I can't remember. I hope I'm not misremembering. I think it's him though. But yeah, oof. Oh dear. But yeah, Labyrinth. I mean, I've talked about the music. It's a fantastic soundtrack. It's really fun. Really catchy songs that are just going to stay with you the entire time. And just for me, it's the artistry behind it. It's the creature design, it's the puppets. It's knowing how much effort had to go into the set building and capturing all of this in camera. Must have been an absolute nightmare. But Henson's company, this is all a labor of love. They love this stuff and they're so creative with it, and they just make these characters real. And it's why the Muppets Christmas Carol is the best version of Christmas Carol. And also Muppets Treasure Island. There you go. That's another one. I'm going to throw that out there. Yeah, I would love a telling of The Hobbit in this style, or the Lord of the like a Muppets Lord of the Rings would be incredible. You'd have to have one live action actor in there, and I feel like that would either have to be Gandalf. I feel like that would have to probably be Gandalf, and then all the rest of them are Muppets. That's the only way that I'd love to see a remake of Lord of the Rings done in that style. But yes, that's Labyrinth. I mean, I don't have masses to say on this one. I'm coming up to an hour already, but there is a reason that this has a cult following, and I think it's just a great fairy tale story. I think it's really, really accessible for people of a younger age that are going to laugh at the funny voices and the funny puppet characters. And because it is a traditional story and a traditional fairy tale, those are everlasting, no matter what age you are. They're always fun to, continue to revisit. So Labyrinth, I've watched countless times. This is another tally today on the amount of times that I've watched Labyrinth. And I'm going to be watching it a whole bunch more times as well. It's never going to go away, and it's always fun to revisit. It's a nice, short, it's like 100-minute movie, just a little over an hour and a half. Perfect. It knew exactly what it wanted to be, and it delivered, and it's great and is worthy of the cult following that it has. Carl says Flight of the Navigator is another great 80s kids film. Yes, that doesn't get enough love. I love that film. Yeah, no, the 80s is so good. You should check out my letterbox. Unlike my 80s letterbox, you can actually grey out the films that you've already seen. And I'm so pleased to say when I go on to like the 1980s on Letterboxd and I grey them all out, it's just a sea of grey. And I'm like, yes, there's still so many films that I need to see from the 80s, but I have covered loads of them. And quite rightly so, because it's one of the best decades for pop culture. Bath Time says, cast the Muppet Lord of the Rings, please. Frodo is Kermit, Galadriel is Miss Piggy. Okay, right. So Gandalf is live action. Yeah, you've got Kermit is Frodo. Sam would probably be, I want to say Fozzie, maybe. And then I think Merry and Pippin would have to be Rizzo and Gonzo. Gonzo would be Merry and Rizzo would be Pippin. Because you need that, you need that pairing. Fozzie, is it Fozzie Bear? Yeah, Fozzie Bear is Sam, definitely, I think. Gollum would probably be, I want to say Animal, because he's just a bit crazy on a chain, but I don't know how I feel about that. Gollum would either have to be Animal or who else? Yeah, Galadriel's a good shout for Miss Piggy. I love her. I'm going off on a Muppets tangent now, but her entrance at Lothlorien needs to be similar to her entrance in Muppets Treasure Island. It's like boom, shaka, laka, laka, boom. And then she comes in riding on an elephant, doesn't she? Or an anteater, and she falls down the stairs and just absolutely stacks it. He's like, you spoiled my entrance. It's such a good film. I need to watch that film. We should review that, actually. Maybe that's a retrospective that's waiting to happen, but there's so many terrible Muppet films as we get later on. But I'd just like to go back and review like Muppets Christmas Carol and Muppets Treasure Island. Just those two, if nothing else. They're great. Sam Eagle is Theoden. Oh, that's a good shout. That's really good. That's probably better. Yeah, Animal is Gimli. We need what's his name? Bunsen and Beaker. We need that guy. Who's he going to play? Oh, this is so. I am so on board for this. This movie, it breaks my heart that this is a film that's never going to happen in my lifetime or ever. But I need it to exist. I really need it. Oh God, who are some of the other Muppet characters? Why am I drawing a blank on everyone? They make Swedish Chef as Denethor for the tomatoes. He wouldn't even need to play Denethor. He'd just need to play Denethor Chef. It's like his cameo in Muppets Treasure Island. They're on the island and he's like, skewer the bushy. And it's like, well, how else did you think we were going to get him in this movie? So if there's no place for him, just have him be Denethor's cook. Oh, God. Muppet characters. I feel like we've covered the main ones that tend to crop up all the time. Is there anyone in Muppets Treasure Island that I'm forgetting? And I mean, they'd probably create some new ones as well, wouldn't they, for Lord of the Rings? I mean, we already had a ring wraith in Muppets Christmas Carol, the Ghost of Christmas Future, who is literally a ring wraith. Like that would be cool. Bean Bunny as Frodo. Oh, the prawn character. Is he the one who throws the starfish shurikens at Gonzo? Are we talking about him? But yeah, we need Bunsen and Beaker in there. I don't know who they could play. Oh, that crazy band. Yeah, probably good as the Nazgul. There's the dog that plays the piano as well. We need him in there somewhere. He was great. You know what? Hang on. Muppet characters. Let's have a look. Oh, Statler and Waldorf. How can we forget them? My God. Yeah. They need to heckle. See, I can imagine them as Grima and Saruman. Like the whole voice of Saruman scene, just like, no! Or just like laughing at Gandalf and co. Oh, that's his name. Ralph. Yeah, I think it's Ralph is the dog. Or hang on. Need to get to the bottom of this. Rolf. Yeah, no, it is Rolf the dog. Yeah, no, you're right. Oh yeah, Pepe the King Prawn. Yeah, who's he going to be? This is a project, and you know what? We should do this as a separate video. But again, it's gonna depress me that we're never going to get this movie. If I knew how to do a YouTube short, I'll say short, I've probably been talking for about 10 minutes. I would isolate this clip right now where we're talking about Muppets Lord of the Rings, because someone needs to pitch this. It's probably Disney, isn't it? Oh God, Disney and Lord of the Rings, that'd be the day. JD Seaman says, considering that both Jim and Brian Henson worked on Labyrinth, Brian, who previously voiced Jack Pumpkinhead in Return to Oz, voices Hoggle, and yet Denise Breyer uses her Belina voice for Junk Lady. Oh, yeah. I do keep forgetting how many characters that Brian Henson's voiced. Hoggle as well for this film was a tremendous achievement. I think they had like 5 people puppeteering that one character. You had the actress who did all the movements, who was dressed in the costume. I'm trying to find a name actually, so she gets a name check. You know, because she watches this show. Why am I blanking on her name? Jesus Christ, I feel really bad. Anyway, they had the one in the costume, and then they had like 4 other people with the animatronic of the head. I always thought Hoggle was a little bit creepy looking. He looks like, you know, if you go to a working man's club or a pub or something, and it's those like old geezers that have got like the absolute sandpaper face, like Mick Jagger, and they're always drinking, and they've got like a big sort of like swollen drunk nose. that's what Hoggle reminds me of. Carl says AI could make this movie. Yeah, you got to get the voices though. I don't think AI is quite there yet, but maybe at some point. You could probably put together a trailer, actually. Maybe I'll have to be the one to do it. That's the only way it's going to get made. Fuck it. If no one else is going to make it, then, you know, I will. Bath Time says they'd probably get the cast of The Raid to be the Nazgul. Make up for Star Wars in it. That'd be amazing. Right, guys, I'm probably going to round... Oh, hang on. Gonzo would be Gollum, maybe. Oh, no, see, I was thinking Merry and Pippin. They need to be part of, like, the main crew, don't they, Gonzo? So, yeah, I don't know who Gollum could be. Who's, like, a really weird-looking Muppet? Now, they're all kind of weird-looking, but who's, like, really weird? Oh, that's it. Cherie Weiser was the name of the girl in the Hoggle bodysuit, just so you know. Thanks for that. Or is it Weiser? Is she German? I'm gonna say Visor. Yeah, I think we've covered all the main ones actually. I'm sort of on Google Images right now, just checking if I can see any. Yeah, we've mentioned Sam Eagle, Swedish Chef. Yeah, I feel like we've covered most of them. I think we've done well. I think we've casted it really well, and then obviously you're going to have human characters in there as well. So, yeah, no, Good job, team. I think we've did it. I think we've got our cast. I think it's locked in. Right. We're going to round off there. Let me know your thoughts on Labyrinth if you're watching this video after the fact. I do want to say this is a great turnout. I didn't expect everyone to be jumping on tonight, but I appreciate all of you. And it's been really, really fun talking Labyrinth and all things Muppet related tonight. So, just going to finish off the last couple of comments here. Carl says, Labyrinth actually does subversion right. You enter this fantasy world, and one of the first things you see is Hoggle pissing in a pond and killing fairies. That's a great point. Yeah. That is the first thing you're witnessing, and it always gets a laugh out of people or gets a reaction from people, and that's the main thing you want. But it is playing into that aspect of fairies are, creepy, mischievous characters, where she goes to rescue one and it bites her straight away. So very much like the Tinkerbell aspect, the very sort of like jealous and bitter and kind of characters. So yeah, it's bringing all the stuff in. But that's a great point about the subversion, definitely. Keep Rian Johnson away from my Labyrinth, though. If they do a Labyrinth 2, they better not fucking get him to direct. Right then. So I'm going to round off there. So if you're discovering this video after the fact, please do consider subscribing. Me and Bath Time are actually going to be going live next Saturday. I don't know if we picked a video topic for that, but we'll have a chat throughout the week and we'll think of some ideas. So me and Bath Time will be back. What else will I be doing? I mean, if I go to see any other films, I've actually got all 3 Lord of the Rings films booked now for the back end of January into February. So it was at the point where me and Dale would only get a chance to see Fellowship, and then because of our schedules and whatnot, we unfortunately wouldn't be able to get to see Two Towers or Return of the King. And I thought they were only putting Lord of the Rings on for 1 week, but I guess maybe because they've sold out or they've done really well, they're actually putting them on again towards the end. So in a wonderful turn of events, me and Dale will be seeing the 25th anniversary of Lord of the Rings on January the 25th, which is still like 11 months before 11 months before the actual anniversary should happen. But anyway, we'll be at that, so that's kind of cool. And then every Sunday after that, so the following Sunday will be at Two Towers, the following Sunday at Return of the King. So, and that might be one you want to tune in for, not just because it's another video of me talking about Lord of the Rings, because me and Dale do actually have a review on that already, his first time seeing the films. But this will be kind of another first, because it will be Dale's first time seeing them on the big screen, which is really exciting. And it's the extended editions as well. So yeah, he actually messaged me the other day saying, I wonder if I'm going to go my whole life never watching the theatrical versions. I'm like, well, maybe check out the theatrical versions at some point. But I mean, the extended editions really are, in my opinion anyway, the definitive versions of those films. So yeah, it'd be cool to see his reaction to seeing it on the big screen. And hopefully the speaker doesn't explode this time, because that happened last time. Or it was the projector, or it was a combination of the sound system and the projector that completely blew up last time I tried to do a Lord of the Rings watch at the cinema. Right at the best moment as well. It was the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. It was right as Gandalf was about to die. And it killed me because I think I've mentioned this story before. There was 2 girls behind me, and one was a Lord of the Rings super nut, and they had tickets booked for all 3 that day. But she brought a mate who had never seen them before. And the sound cut out during the whole Balrog scene. So she saw Gandalf's death, but without the music and without the sound, and then the screen blew up, and it was a whole thing. So hopefully that doesn't happen this time. But it was kind of cool that the Balrog roaring actually was the thing that killed the sound. I was like, that's pretty cool. If it's going to be any sound effect, if I go and see Star Wars, it needs to be the seismic charge. If it's Lord of the Rings, it needs to be the Balrog roar. That time says I can't get Return of the King booked. I think I might have to travel like 3 hours if I want to see it. Yeah, I mean, that's a commitment. That's a commitment to try and get there if you can. But I mean, they're always going to put them on at the cinema, so you can always catch it at another point. But I understand the frustration. If you're watching the first one and the second one, certainly at that point, you kind of teed up to watch that third one. Robin says I'd have trouble forgetting that one. Hang on. Did I miss something? Oh, was it this? Tolkien did make propaganda for elves. They used to nick your kids before he got... His hands on them. Oh no. Right, we're gonna round off there. Have a great night, guys, and yeah, I'll catch you on the next video. I'll probably do like an update next week as to what you can expect from the channel, but yeah, so content being sprinkled through January, but February and March, that's when it kicks into overdrive with a whole load more retrospectives. So yeah, thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. Have a great night, and I'll catch you guys soon. Take care, everyone.